Hey, I'm back.
Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. This is the All Access Med School Admissions Podcast. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Christian Essman, and I'm the Senior Director of Admissions and Financial Aid here at the medical school. Yes, I'm back after a little bit of a podcast hiatus, back to bring you a little special episode here, followed by a school episode. Took a little break here for a while. It's been really, really busy at school, at home, and so needed to kind of prioritize the application season and some other stuff. So, hey, I've got this episode here. I wanted to bring you like some updates on the application cycle and also some advice if you are in the process of getting ready to apply for the next year. So it's good to be back with you, have some ideas and plans for upcoming episodes, but I wanted to get this one out to you now about, because I know a lot of people are going on winter break. At the time I'm recording this, it's beginning of December or middle of December in 2021, and some students may have a winter break coming up that might last almost a month, it seems like. So no better time than now than to start to think about the medical school application process. So we'll get into that in just a second. But been having a great interview cycle, been meeting a lot of listeners who have flattered me and caught me off guard on interview days, telling me that they're fans of the show and they listen and stuff. It's just so humbling and flattering. So I'm just so grateful that this resource has reached so many people, and it's helped some people along to get where they are, and they're getting interviews, because that is a huge hurdle to overcome. So congratulations to them, and grateful for them to reach out and give me a little shout out on the interview day. So very cool, very cool. So a lot of times people, when I'm talking with folks, they ask me like how's the cycle going compared to last cycle, or, how's this season going? And so I thought I'd share with you some updates, some information that we received. We were on a AMCAS call a couple weeks ago with some cycle updates, and so I thought I'd share a little bit of that data with you. So as of at the end of November, AMCAS had processed 52,585 applications compared to 59,912 applications in last year's cycle. And for those of you who hadn't heard, that last year's application cycle saw an 18% increase in applications. So it was huge. But this year seems to be a little more back down to quote unquote normal that we're used to seeing with regard to our application numbers. I've found that in talking with some friends at other schools, they're seeing kind of the same kind of data right now compared to last year. Last year was just a different kind of year for a lot of reasons, but especially when it came to admissions. So during this one AMCAS call that we had, they shared some things that have changed in this cycle compared to last cycle, and some things that haven't changed in this current cycle versus the 2021-2022 cycle, 2020 and 2021 cycle. Sorry. Some of the things that haven't changed compared to last year are the average age of applicants. That hasn't changed. The cumulative GPA and BCPM of applicants hasn't changed. Different majors or anything, that they're seeing the same types of majors applying this year compared to last year. Gap years, they're not seeing any changes in the number of applicants taking gap years, and the number of experiences hasn't really changed, and the number of experience hours hasn't changed, which is kind of interesting. But some changes that they have noticed this year compared to last year, there are more women in this current cycle. There are more Black African American applicants in this cycle. There are more what are called EO1, which is a code that we use in the application cycle for educational opportunity type 1. also known as first generation college or sometimes first generation high school, for their parents. So when we see EO1, that's a category for parental educational opportunities. So they're seeing more of those applicants, which is great. More applicants receiving the AMCAS fee waiver this cycle, and more applicants without MCAT scores, which I don't know what that is attributed to, but if I had to guess, I know that some early assurance programs and linkage programs don't require the MCAT. So maybe there are more applicants in those categories this year compared to last year. So early assurance programs, if you're not familiar, is usually like a partnership with the undergrad university with the adjoining medical school. So sometimes students, they interview as high school students to get into these programs, and they get an early assurance or kind of like a conditional acceptance into the medical school if they maintain an academic standard. And if they maintain that and they don't blow off their interview, they get a conditional acceptance to the medical school. So those usually have some higher number of seats for some schools. And linkage programs, if you're not familiar, are usually linkages with post-bac programs, like for career changer programs with medical schools, and some special master's programs with medical schools. So maybe those numbers are up this year. So I'm going to try to do a little digging on my end to see if I can find out why that is. But I don't think there are schools are waiving the MCAT this year like somewhere last year in 2020. So this year, again, has felt like a more typical cycle for us, at least at Case. And again, in talking with a number of my friends around the country, many of them feel the same way too. So it seems to be back to quote unquote normal application cycle. But I'll tell you, we still have a lot of applications to still get through. We don't have a shortage of them this year. So interestingly, the AMCAS showed some data about those that are applying to medical schools compared to last year. And when it comes to reapplicants. And so this cycle, the 2021-2022 cycle, there have been 15,532 reapplicants, or that's 29% of the pool. Whereas in 2020-2021, there were 14,651 reapplicants that comprised 24% of the pool. And the year prior to that was 13,690, or 26% of the pool. So I remember looking at data in the past, and every year it seems to be around 25% of the pools are comprised of reapplicants. And so this year it's 29%. So a couple points higher. I think that probably is attributed to the larger number of applicants last year, and medical schools weren't increasing class sizes last year. So we had about the same number of seats to fill. So naturally there's going to be people that did not get into med school last year, and they're reapplying this year. So listen, there is no shame in reapplying to medical school. It is incredibly competitive. So does it hurt if you don't get? I know it hurts if you don't get in the first time, but yes, of course. But this is an incredibly competitive process, and sometimes it just takes a second attempt. But some quick advice on that, and if you haven't heard this before in other episodes, if you are reapplying, fix whatever might have been your anchor before reapplying. Don't just put the same application out there again, because it might have the same results. So try to figure out what needs to be fixed and then apply after that. So what about interviews next year? So currently this year, pretty much every medical school has been virtual again. And we are getting questions about what's that going to look like next year for the next cycle, 22-23. And I think it's still up in the air. I know a lot of schools are really leaning towards staying virtual. Some schools want to go in person, and some may think about doing some kind of hybrid. I don't know, but I get the feeling that a lot of schools are sticking with that virtual interviews. As mentioned in a previous episode back in the summer, when we were talking about virtual interviews. We've seen a lot of benefits and advantages for both applicants and admissions offices. Like, for instance, like for applicants, the financial aspect is enormous. I mean, the amount of money that you save and not having to travel around the country is just huge. And then there's the convenience factor for applicants, because they don't have to take time away from school or as much time away from school or having to take a couple of days off of work to travel for interviews. And then for medical schools, it's been kind of convenient for our faculty interviewers who are clinicians, and sometimes they're in the hospitals and they can steal themselves away for 45 minutes or so to interview somebody in an office and then get back to seeing patients versus having to travel across town, find parking, get in the building, interview somebody, go back to the hospital, find parking back at the hospital. And so that can add up quickly. So, and same thing for students, our medical students that interview, the convenience factor has been pretty high too, among other factors. But those are two right off the top of my head that have been like the top two that people comment on a lot. I'll tell you what, I still really miss the in-person interviews, the energy, the buzz in the room. We feed off of that, and applicants, as we mentioned before in the previous episodes, they're missing the vibe of the school on the interview day, and they're exploring the city on their interview day if they get in town early and stuff, and checking out the campuses and things like that. But I will say many of us are planning on hosting open houses and campus visit opportunities for accepted students. So I think if medical schools decide to stay for virtual interviews next year or even farther down the line, you're going to see more schools offering on-campus opportunities to come visit, like open houses or first looks or second look kind of things for accepted students. So, and that's also an opportunity if you've been accepted and you're coming for some kind of open house visit. It's certainly under much less stressful conditions, right? So you're not having to wear uncomfortable dress shoes and suits and stuff like that. It's a little different feeling when you come for an open house after you're accepted. So the pressure's off. So, all right. So there's a little bit of an update for what we've been seeing this cycle. I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit about, just give you some advice if you are in the process of considering applying next spring. And so I want to talk a little bit about your work and activities section and a little bit about personal statements. We've talked about personal statements and these work and activities sections numerous times with guests, but I just wanted to come back and revisit that a little bit for maybe some of our newer listeners, and they haven't gone through all the different episodes and pulled out all the little nuggets. So if you're getting ready to apply next spring, winter break, like I said a little bit ago, is a good time to start to explore the process. And in the episode description, I've put a link to the 2021-2022 AMCAS guide, which will give you an idea of what the process entails. That guide doesn't change too much from year to year. AMCAS is going to be adding a few new fields next year, I'm told. I don't know exactly what those are off the top of my head, but for the most part, the bones remain the same. So if you look at that 2021-2022 guide, you'll get an idea of what this all entails. So just to warn you, I mean, this application process that you're about to embark on is a beast. And if the guide itself is 80 pages long. So if that gives you any indication of the breadth and depth that you're about to share with medical schools, it's something to really keep in mind. So with regards to the work and activities section, I thought it'd be helpful just to read to you what it says in that guide to give you an idea right now of what this section of the application is about. So word for word, this is what it says. The work and activities section of the application is designed to give you the opportunity to highlight your work experience, extracurricular activities, awards, honors, or publications that you would like to bring to the attention of the medical schools to which you are applying. You may enter a maximum of 15 experiences, and you may enter 4 separate date ranges for recurring experiences. This section cannot be edited or updated after the original submission of your application, so it's kind of set in stone. Work And activities will appear on your application in chronological order and may not be rearranged. However, please be aware that medical schools sort your entries and view them in a variety of different orders to suit their specific review processes. Medical schools receive your work and activities descriptions as plain text. Therefore, formatting options such as bullet lists, indented paragraphs, and bold/italics fonts do not appear for reviewers and are not available. So there's the description from the guide. A couple things I want to point out is, like it says, it defaults to chronological order, and medical schools do different things. We can filter or rearrange them based on what's important to that particular program. Like, say, it's an MSTP or an MD PhD program. They may decide to sort by research, and they want to see all the research stuff first. So there's different things we can do within our platforms that we review the applications on. I also highlight that once this section is, you click submit, like I said, and insert a little comment in there, it is kind of set in stone. So any mistakes that are made in the experiences section are then going to stay there. You can't update it. And there's nothing that medical schools can do on our end to change that data either. So AMCAS feeds our platforms and we can't change it. And then the other thing I wanted to comment on is that, remember, it's really important to point out that, like it says, the descriptions are in plain text. So you can't do those bullet points. You can't try to highlight things with bold font and things like that, or get fancy fonts and stuff like that. So it's just very plain text. So let me tell you, when you're going to put these together, you have to explain what the experience type is that best represents what it is you're sharing. And so there's a drop-down menu for the different options. You get to put a name of this description of what the activity is and the date ranges that you participated in them. There's total hours, so you enter the total number of hours that you completed or expect to complete. So be really careful here. I've noticed this year, I feel like more of our screeners and our admissions committee members have been commenting on how applicants have been estimating those hours. It's so much so that, like, when you add them all up, it doesn't seem possible that this applicant could have done all these things. Like, they're really overestimating the number of hours they've been doing things, so much so when you do the math on it, it's like there's no way this student could have done all this. There's not that many hours in a month or in a year to be doing all these things. It just seems a little fishy. So be really careful here when you're estimating those hours. And so just a little tidbit there. You also have to provide the organization name, like maybe it was the name of the hospital or the name of the school or the name of the club, and then a contact information for a person who may have been in charge of that activity. So like your employer or a PI, an investigator, a principal investigator, like a research mentor or a leader of the club. Or advisor for that club. So you're going to need a contact name there. And then you get the activity description. Now, each one of these 15 experiences, you are given 700 characters to give a description. And that's kind of a lot. And then of all these 15, if you do choose to do 15, you get to select 3 of them as your most meaningful activity, in which case you're given 1,350 additional characters so you can share like why it was so impactful or why it had such a huge influence on you. So when you think about this, when you're writing these descriptions for all your experiences, you're essentially composing mini essays for each one. And this is where, you know, having some planning and starting to kind of work on this stuff over break and start to craft some of these out can really, you know, get the ball rolling, because you're going to want to be very thoughtful in how you're crafting each one of these. And so now, naturally, like if you have Dean's List or some other kind of academic honor that can be common, like med schools know what Dean's Lists are. And so you don't need to write a 700 character description of what Dean's List is, but you can give a quick little description and then move on. But really these 700 characters or the 700 plus 1,350 characters, again, I can't stress enough, these are like mini essays. So one tip I have would be for you, if you're getting ready to apply next spring is over winter break. If you haven't done so already, create like a Google Doc or like a Word doc and begin to document this information. Like, again, the contact names, the contact information, then what you would call it, and then start drafting up some of these little mini essays or these descriptions for each one. And they should include some reflections and self-insight in addition to the details of what the activity was or your role was in it. So you give it like the facts of like what you did in that particular extracurricular, but then give us some insight into what you took away from it. And I think that's where you really have the opportunity to bring your application to life and help medical schools get an idea of who you really are, not just what you've done, but also who you are, like how you've grown from these experiences. My daughter's applying to college right now. She's a senior, and looking at the Common App over her shoulder, in the Common App, you get 150 characters for your experiences or activities. And I know she kind of struggled with having 150 characters to tell colleges about some activity she'd been doing for 4 years. And so it's a very different type of application. And so medical schools, I think, really value when an applicant uses that space to kind of share more about themselves and how, again, can't emphasize enough how you've grown and how you challenges you faced when you're in that activity and maybe things you overcame and grew from or gained new experiences from. So it's okay to say, boy, at the beginning of this activity, I wasn't a very good public speaker and I was losing people's attention. I could tell, but over time I got better and better at it, and it's something I'm still working on. But I feel more comfortable now standing up in front of people and I'm not losing my audience anymore. We read that kind of stuff all the time. And I think that is really, there's great value there. So I want to give a quick little comment about the personal statement too. This always creates a bit of angst and among applicants. And so this is something else that you can start to draft up or organize and outline maybe over winter break too. So let me just read you the prompt of what the personal statement or the comment, personal comments as they call it in AMCAS is for medical school. Here you go, word for word. Personal comments essay. Consider and write your personal comments essay carefully. Many admissions committees place significant weight on the essay. Here are some questions that you may want to consider while writing the essay. 1. Why have you selected the field of medicine? 2. What motivates you to learn more about medicine? 3. What do you want medical schools to know about you that has not been disclosed in other sections of the application? In addition, you may wish to include information such as unique hardships, challenges, or obstacles that may have influenced your educational pursuits, comments on significant fluctuations in your academic record that are not explained elsewhere in your application. So, a lot to think about there, and I'm not going to spend the time on this episode to go through personal comments or personal statement tips and highlights. I've done that in previous episodes, and it certainly has come up with guests in the past of things that we value or things that we think are something that you should think about when you're writing personal statements. But I wanted to, again, this is just kind of a primer for applicants that are getting ready to apply, just to give you some quick insights. So there's a lot to think about here, but winter break might be a good time to start when you might have more mental space and the time to kind of sit down on the couch someplace and kind of chip away at this a little bit and begin the process of starting to map out what you want to start to share with people. So there you go. If you're going to be applying for the next cycle, I've just given you some homework, but my hope is that if you start thinking and laying some groundwork now, you'll be in a better position come May when the application opens up. You'll refer back to your document. You'll have a lot of things done, or your descriptions for your extracurriculars already taken care of. And at that point, you're just kind of cutting and pasting and maybe fine-tuning and just double-checking, triple-checking the grammar and everything, and you're in a better position than come May versus just starting that process. If you're applying as a current student, near the end of your year when you have final exams and papers and stuff to write, doing this kind of stuff right now may save you some headaches and some stress down the road. So hopefully that helps you get geared up and ready to go. I'll be looking forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.